call the February 28, 2019 Town Council meeting to order. Please stand. Pledge the flag. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to take a moment of silence for several people in town that have passed. Edna Thulman, Bart Hay, and Clemmy Sherman. Gail Sherman's husband has passed away. So if we could have a moment of silence. Thank you. Mr. Wolf, do you need to call your meeting to order?
I
It's
don't,
a workshop. It was posted on the Secretary of
right,
State.
well, we don't
If you
have
would
a
like-
quorum.
You don't have a quorum.
Yeah,
I
so,
guess you don't-
that's why, that was the question before, I think we're just a guest of you, and we're working out
Yep.
like that.
I expect a quorum. Okay. So we did invite the Police Building Committee, as I stated in my email. We're hoping to get a sense of where we are. I know you have sent us several concerns, and that is later in the agenda. But we want to see where you stand as far as what the progress is. Some of the concerns that are being brought up now, honestly, I thought would have been brought up previous to this point. For instance, the whole issue with the Historical Society. I mean, and I don't know architects, so I could be talking the wrong way, but I would assume
I have the
that
same
that-
question.
Okay, so I would have assumed that was done. This committee was appointed back in April of 2016. It's been quite a while now, and the council has not had anything except for what they hear when they attend the meetings. So I'm just curious as to what is going on and what you're projecting at this time.
Okay. Right.
Yes.
All right, so there is nothing outside of what you hear at the meetings, because that's where we do all business, right? So we don't know any more than what you hear there. So our last step was I met Andrew yesterday with Rhode Island Historical Commission, and they have posed some unique challenges that we need to figure out whether they actually have the authority to do that or not. Normally what happens, is my understanding, and Jim can correct me if I'm wrong, or Andrew, and I've been through this 1,000 times over the years, is you design a structure in a historical area, and then they may come in, particularly if there's state or federal money in the project, and say, we don't like the glazing on those windows, we don't like the type of shingling used on the roof, and you make minor, fairly insignificant changes. In this case, they wanted to make very substantial changes. So we're trying to figure out exactly where that is, but they would not weigh in on the project, again, correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, until there was a design done. That's
I
when
thought
that.
there was a design done. I thought we've seen.
Well, we do, yeah, but they wouldn't look at it until that.
When was the design done?
It's actually, the design isn't even 100% because we had just the survey just got complete.
No, the
Right.
survey's been done.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, well, I got it all right here. I'll give you the dates. So the survey, survey results came in on the 19th of September. We set a first meeting, we had to approve it at a public meeting.
Was that of 2018?
18th,
Yeah.
yeah. So we had to set a public meeting to discuss. We set a meeting for the 18th. That got postponed because two of the committee members weren't notified. We then set a new meeting for 10/25/18, and we voted to accept the survey and have that sent over to Edward Rouse. And then which it was, and then on 11/23, ERA contacted us with questions, asking about septic system, coordination meetings. Well, actually, that was a conversation, I think, between Brendan and ERA, things that we wanted to, and then the historic district question came up. Let's see. And it was, from there on out, they had the survey, and then we were just gonna go on to the next thing. We did contact the historic district, and that took, a month or so.
So if I may interject some of the information that I've gathered. On December 12th, because we had not heard anything, I contacted Jim Partridge, that's the gentleman with ERA.
Yeah, right here.
Okay, hi.
Hi, how are you?
Nice to put a face with the voice. So I spoke to you, and you were, I was concerned about what was going on, because we had sent you the survey, and you said that you were waiting for the AutoCAD. Is that the correct
Yeah,
term?
we got that.
Okay, and that you had looked back because I was concerned that you hadn't received it, you had requested it, and I was concerned that you had not received it. You said your contact information was Rebecca.
Yep.
While you were looking for that information, you found an email from Rebecca dated November 5th. So it was over a month before you saw that you needed to do a digital disclaimer. That was done, even though I asked it to be done that day, it was done a week or so later. So now we're at this point. So there seems to be a lot of slack or delays. I don't know if anybody else has any. I'll start monopolizing.
Why did the survey take until September 2018 to get
The
the
survey,
that you're talking about now?
that's how long they take. There was
Do
one
they?
bid, and that was it. The
Really?
town said that's the bid we should go with. If we want to approve it, we did. I would have sent it out for 3 bids and got a little better selection of people. That didn't, it's not what it is. We can't control how long they take.
Right.
And then again, you also remember, everything's a public hearing. That's not like you're building your house. So you get something in, we can't just then decide, all right, we're good with this. We have to set a public hearing, everybody has to come, everybody has to vote on it this time. And this time on both ways. I mean, you know, there's questions that I've posed to you guys a month ago. I've asked the questions, and they haven't been addressed at town
No, they
council
have
yet or
not.
funded. So everybody is
They were
not
being
quite hitting the
addressed
target.
tonight because I felt that we needed to wait until we had everybody here, and this is the night that we're here.
Okay.
So yes, there are questions that have not been addressed. But putting in a month on me and putting 3 years, there's a difference. And yes, you have to have a meeting held, but you have 2 days to put it on the Secretary of State's website and then hold it.
We typically do it 30 days out so people can prepare to come to a meeting, so they don't get blindsided and say, oh, I can't come. We try to plan them on nights that don't conflict with other meetings. So,
Okay.
and we didn't, you can follow all the minutes. We nobody dragged their feet. It takes a long time to draw plans, it takes a long time to get a survey done. We were sent in 3 different directions on different ways to do things that people wanted to build into the town hall.
Well, on April 14th, when this committee was formed, a mission statement was formulated by Chief Seal, which reads, "The committee is charged to evaluate and report back to the town council regarding the location, design, and building of a new police station that meets the needs of the police department and that will serve the residents of the town of Foster. The station shall be constructed in order to provide a safe, efficient, and cost-effective building that will consider both current and future needs of the town. The committee shall consist of 1 member of the town council, the police chief, and 5 members at large, with the treasurer and the building and zoning officials as consults. Said committee will be appointed by the council and report back to the council no later than August 25th, 2016.
And I understand what the mission statement is, I read it into the meeting every time, so what was the point?
I'm just stating that you were to report back to us.
We did. I reported back looking for extension, and if you go back to the videos of the town council meeting, you'll see that was a big issue, that people didn't want to do an extension, and eventually, I'm gonna get all the dates there. So that was, meeting, let's see.
Well, let me ask you this, Mr. Walsh.
Okay, so it was August 25th, 2016, in the town council minutes, that Cheryl Laws moved, John Lewis seconded, 5-0, approval to extend the deadline for president. The deadline was unachievable in any stretch of the imagination, so I'm
You
not
run
sure.
a business, am I correct?
Pardon me?
You run a business?
Sure.
Would you put out for 3 years? Would you be out of business?
If I was gonna follow the legal process, yeah.
And,
You have to remember, with all due respect, we were told that the Situate Police Department was merging with Foster. We went through that process. If you remember, I got it on the agenda down
yes,
there. Then they met with the town council, only to find out that there was no truth to that. Then it was gonna be built in the town hall, so then we went and we measured all that stuff, and all these things have to come back to public hearings every time. Everybody wanted to explore every option.
I will correct you, they're not public hearings, they're meetings. Public hearings have to
Public
be
meetings,
advertised. They're-
that's fine.
It's a meeting.
It's
not a
a,
public
it has to be agenda in a public
hearing.
meeting.
Right, a public meeting.
How often does the building committee meet? Is it?
As
once a-
needed.
Once a month?
It was originally every 2 weeks, I think, when we first got going, but then, like, when the plan's being drawn, there's no need for us to meet during any of that time, because there's nothing to discuss. When the survey's being drawn, if you took the plans and the survey, I mean, that's probably a year right there, or close to it.
Mr. Walden, did you have?
Yeah. I'm embarrassed to say I'm on the committee. I think 3 years to get to the state we are is pretty much a waste. And if I was on the council, I would be inclined to take it over because whatever's going on in the background between people or whatever's shenanigans, for lack of a better word, are going on, this isn't working. What's the price going up in 3 years? What's the inflation rate been? 25%? At a $2 billion building, that's $500,000. It's unconscionable.
And even at this point where we are, we have a financial town meeting in May. We don't have a number, we have no idea what anything's gonna cost. There's no way we can put anything to the voters.
It's just my opinion.
I mean, this is going to be the third financial town meeting. Mrs. Ryder?
This is it's beginning to sound a lot like a job performance evaluation or the council evaluating the job performance of the committee. And I'm just wondering, were they offered the ability to have it in closed session? Because,
It's a workshop. It's
but
not,
it's a very accusatory workshop.
I'm not accusing, I'm accusing that we're 3 years out. I'm sure you've heard the talk too. I get constantly, Situate went out and it's up already.
People going to jail on that one.
Granted.
I would not go with that one.
Granted,
There's 18 people under investigation on that,
granted, Mr. Walsh.
so.
And I do point that out.
And
We are.
and how did they get there? Does that print look familiar? That's the blueprint we
Yeah.
started with. The price is the quote from ERA. That's it. They didn't do any work. They did no public work. They just said, that's what Foster's got, we're gonna
So
do it.
can you give us a guesstimate of when we can go? Because as Mrs. Rogers says, the financial town meeting, we have to go to a financial town meeting. Ours is in May. I don't see that happening, not to do the PR that we need to do to get this out there, to get the information out there correctly for the people. This is a lot of, this, I'm assuming is going to be a lot of money, to get that information out there. So we're going to have to schedule a special financial town meeting. Do you have a guesstimate as to when we might be able to have something to present to the public?
So, just to back up a few minutes on the 3 years, I would have liked to have done this in 30 days. I don't care, the 3 years is
I'm
not, I don't
sure.
know why anybody thinks I'm causing 3 years. I don't know if that was aimed at me, them, but it had nothing to do
No.
I
with
don't
me.
know what's going on.
We went through the public process and that's it. If I could have been off this committee in 30 days, I would have been thrilled. From here on out, I have no control over this. The Historical Commission is now asked for some substantial changes. We need either legal advice or someone who can tell us, do they have the authority to even ask for that? If they don't have the authority to ask for that, then we're looking at minor revisions to the plan and it can go out for pricing. So you will have a number to go to referendum if that's what you want to do.
Thank you for coming, Mr. Robinson.
No problem.
I just wanted to acknowledge, Mr. Robinson is here. He's the chair of the Foster Preservation Society.
Okay.
And he was able to make tonight's
Perfect.
meeting, so thank you. Maybe I should ask, because I am ignorant of how a building gets going, but in my mind, when you had that design created, I've seen the design, and you had the specs, is that the correct terminology, of what the building was going to look like?
Correct.
Wouldn't it have then been the time to check with the Historical Society, or even check with them prior to that, to know? I don't know.
Well, we initially reached out to the State Historic Preservation Society to tell them that we're going to look at designing a new police station in this historic district. We gave them an aerial Google map view, and gave them an approximate location, but at that time, we had no set dimensions or anything like that. It was just spots, essentially, that's close to where the existing station is, the existing parking lot and so forth. And basically, the comment that came back was, well, once you get a design that's been approved by the town, then we'll visit.
Okay,
So we got a preliminary design done, which we got done back in October of 2017, and that was approved. But at that time, we still needed to get a survey done prior to actually seeing how this actual building location is going to fit relative to existing conditions. We were working off 30-year-old site plans, which were drastically different than what's out there right now. So once we get that survey done, then we can actually sit the building into the property a little bit better, maybe even shift it a little bit. But Joe reached out to me and wanted to get this thing going, so we took the existing design that we had as it was approved by the town in terms of the building committee, and we sent that off to the state level, and then we set up a meeting, or Joe set up a meeting with Glenn Rodiker and Roberta, I think it's Randall, at the state level to see the site and talk about sort of the logistics of the site. And their meeting on site was just that. It was a meeting on site, and they didn't want the building sort of where we proposed to show it. They wanted behind the hill because they thought that their thinking was the hill is part of the historic nature of this district. And the hill is a big component relative to access from the public side off of Howard Street. And then the police side has got parking and secure areas for their police operations on the back side of the building, which would be accessed from around the backside where the public works department is and the police, fire department. So they really didn't care relative to the program that we all worked together on in terms of getting this thing put together. We tried to minimize the size of the building, not just for cost, but also the scale of the building, to make sure that it kind of fits in the integrity of the existing historic district. The Rhode Island Historic side of things was indicating that the scale is still too big. But we have certain programs that we have to fit into this building, that it's just not police operations, but it's also accommodating the public, the town of Boston, to use this facility for certain aspects in terms of meetings and in-service type of things, in terms of what the police department is actually doing. We have some space relative to that they use for the town that's separate from the police type of activity. So there's a lot going on relative to the program to get all this to work and get it as concise as possible. But we still have issues with respect to how this building is situated on the site and keeping with the vernacular of the district. And again, I don't know the legalities relative to what they can enforce versus what they can't enforce.
I'm wondering the same thing. I'm wondering the same.
What was the date of that meeting?
When we actually got it approved for the preliminary design, it was October 17th, 2017.
That doesn't sound, again, no knowledge, doesn't sound very cost effective on your part, as far as they're telling you have to design it, and then they come back and say, oh, you have to change this. That, to me, doesn't sound very cost effective.
Like I said, I don't manage or dictate how they do their business. They have their protocols and their regulations and statutory, and we have to work together on this.
Yeah, but to me, that sounds like putting the cart before the horse, if you will.
Well, you really got to put something together that works, that's going to work
Right.
for the town, both on the police side and the town side.
It's too bad you can't meet in the beginning stages, and so you're not spending all this time and effort to get this done, and then they make changes. Does anybody else have any?
So there's nothing else that can be done until we hear back from them?
Well, Mr. Walsh did contact me today asking if someone from Forest Preservation could attend. And I did reach out to Mr. Robinson, and he was willing to come tonight to answer any questions, which I'm assuming we would do later. can we move it forward? We do have the concerns.
We try to move it forward while they're all here
Right,
before they
yeah.
leave.
I think that would be.
So we
so
have
Make a
I would
motion,
make
we move it forward.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we're going to then move forward with your questions. So in, either on your laptop or in your packet, there are questions that Mr. Walsh had presented to the council a month ago.
They're all tied together.
Yes. I have mine here, and then you have new questions today.
Yeah, the only other question would be, does the state have the authority to have us change the design code? And I don't know who has that answer.
Is there state money involved?
We don't have any.
We don't know, that's the big
We're not
question.
at that point.
don't have anything.
I'll
We have
have to look
nothing.
into that. That's
Yeah.
it. I would say, off the top of my head, is not knowing the appropriate answer right now. If there were state money involved, I'd say yes, they would have absolute right to be involved. Other than that, I'm not sure, maybe someone else will know, but I'll research it before the, within the week to see what the story is with that.
I mean, the redesign that they'd be looking for would be not only costly in the redesign stage, but it also would change a lot of public access. It would be detrimental to the use of the building, I would think. So unless there was a ton of state money involved.
There's no.
No, I'm saying if, let's say there was a grant available that you don't know about yet during your investigation. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe you know better than, I mean, I have no idea, I'm finding that's outside of the purview of the building committee.
Like,
So,
I mean, it could be a state statute, and I'm unaware of it, but that would come in and say, okay, in any historic district, in any city or town, they have authority over what's gonna be built here, so you don't put up like a shack.
Right.
Right, so I mean, I don't know, but I'll find that out. And, typical of Rhode Island, that's just how this state works, right? I mean, nothing gets done on time, and sometimes that's just the way they operate, like you were just describing it. I mean, they're not gonna go out of their way to help
No,
any
of course
city or
not.
town. So, I mean, that's something that you have to look at, and that's sometimes you can get a hold of anyone at the state level. So.
Well, they were actually pretty cooperative to come out, but it's just not gonna be real cooperative for what you want. But when the town hall was built, did anything happen? That's recent, really, right?
I,
Quite a bit went on to see this stuff.
Was it?
would I-
Yeah.
Mr. Robinson, do you have anything you can add to this
Well, I just-
conversation?
I was going to say because it's in a federal historic district, it's not a state, it's not a local, it's a federal historic district, which was done back about 1982, which was after the town hall was built. They can only influence you as far as federal funding is concerned. So if the town were looking for some kind of a grant from the federal government that will pay for the police station, which probably isn't a bad idea, but that gives them then a position to speak from. Other than that, they can ask you to try to keep something that externally is sympathetic to the historic nature of the town. In other words, don't put a 12 stoplight intersection.
Neon signs.
That would really make them nuts.
Sure.
Although they did a pretty good job driving signs in all along the road. But, yeah, if you're not dealing with federal funding, you're not saying, all right, we're gonna get a federal grant and then we're gonna tear down this historic building over here, they really don't have a lot of area to influence you.
Okay. That's good.
You know, it was good that you went to them, and Roberta Randall has been very helpful to us with the pond restoration. She's a historical architect,
Mhm.
so, avail yourself of help where you can get it, but, there's not much they can do if you're not playing with their money.
Yeah, and they did repeatedly ask about funding, and I figured that's what that question was for. So,
And I will always go for somebody else's money if I can get it.
my understanding was when the previous chief had looked into any grants that could be available, and they were all tied to ADA and stuff throughout the town or whatever, so there was a lot of, from his opinion anyway, that there was really no grants at all, that this was all beyond us.
I recall that. I recall
Just, can
that.
I ask a question? Is this a state historic district too, or just federal?
just federal.
So it's not in a state historic district.
No, and the town doesn't have a historic district ordinance.
Okay, so
So you're in a federal historic district, it's on the register.
And so who's instructing you? Is that, is the state coming in and saying that you have to do things differently, or is it the federal government?
They didn't necessarily come in. What happened was Jim had asked if we had any interaction with the historic district. And of course, I didn't figure that was really part of what we were doing, but so I figured we'd reach out and find out if they had any questions, and they did. And that was it. So it's just really, at some point in time, I guess they would show up on their own if we didn't call them.
We'll have to talk to them and see what the story is.
Mrs. Ryan, did you have your hand up?
No, I remember looking into this once, and if the town had its own historic district commission, then we would be able to avail ourselves of many grant opportunities. But it would mean that you were pretty much under the state's thumb.
I remember talking to Mr. Lewis about that.
Right, but since we're not, other than the federal, concerns, I don't know what they could, maybe they're not aware that we don't have a historic district commission and that we're not.
I would think they would know that.
I would think they know that too.
Right.
However,
But
it's the state.
any other questions? Now, we do have in your packet or on your laptop, there are questions here from Mr. Walsh. The one is about a building permit from the Foster Building official. I don't think we're at that point yet. We haven't even been approved by the town. That would be my assumption. An on-site wastewater treatment system permitting the proposed leaching field design.
These actually originated from the historic people also. So they asked about the funding and are there any special permits that are gonna be required in the project. Now, obvious building permits, that stuff we get. But
But
these
how
are all,
would
these
we-
are all obvious ones, that these actually came back from Jim that made these suggestions. So I don't know whether it was another permit, like something that we're not familiar with, that be building in a historic area or something. I'm not sure why they would be asking that question.
And I'm not sure how we can answer it when we don't even know what it's looking like,
Right.
or what, I don't know,
More importantly, what I was trying to do is give you all the information that the historic, what Glenn had asked for. That's what he asked for, and that's the information that we have. And the question was if, there's, wealth of knowledge in this room, and people might say, oh yeah, if you're gonna, when we built the town hall, we needed to do this, or something that we might know, things I wouldn't know. The more
have you brought
important,
these questions forward to your committee?
no, we haven't had a meeting since any of this. So this was all,
If I read some of the questions, maybe the two committee members, additional committee members, there's three?
Yeah. I got a question. Has a council person been assigned to the committee yet?
No,
That's later on
that's
the
later,
agenda.
that's on this agenda tonight. So, the first question is building permit from the Boston building official.
yeah.
Yes, we would have to
sure,
do that.
yeah.
And we can't do that until we know what it looks like, or what the measurements, et cetera. On-site wastewater treatment system from RIDE, I'm sorry,
DEM.
DEM, that's my old job speaking. Permitting for the proposed leaching field design. Again, I would think we
We
can't.
addressed that, and we decided not to spend the money on that.
Right, at that
That
point.
design and survey at this point.
Okay.
Because you don't know where the building's gonna
We
be.
don't know where the building's gonna be. Stormwater management, Rhode Island pollutant discharge elimination system, general permit for discharge of stormwater associated with construction activities required by DEM.
That's definite. Once you're into construction, you have to manage the stormwater effects of the site so that it doesn't spill out to other sites that are adjacent to the project area.
Again, can we answer that now without knowing where?
It will be addressed.
It's,
It would have to,
yeah,
all right,
we know
to me,
that it's-
this is putting the cart before the horse again.
Yeah.
This is a state asking.
This is from Glenn Modica from the Historic Commission.
From the state of
Asked
Fed.
me if we would need any, was there any federal or state money, and are there any special permits needed on this project? So I have, obviously, we know all the obvious ones, so I asked Jim if he was aware of any other permits there would be, and he listed these, which are still basically the obvious ones. So I don't know if there's anything other than that. All I was doing is providing you with the information to answer that question, that's all.
And then the fourth one is Providence Water Supply Board, Drinking Water Supply Board watershed, contributing to the Situate Reservoir Water Supply Permit.
I would think that's not gonna matter which site it's on, that we're gonna.
It's the same thing,
That's all gonna come,
they're all standard
Once the design
permits,
is
again,
done.
it's just.
Once it design. Permits required by the Town of Forster Major Land Development Regulation Review Process. Again, I'm thinking once we know, we're not at that point.
right.
So then it continues with, and correct me if I'm missing anything, Mr. Walsh, but will this be a standalone septic or mutual septic incorporating the other town buildings? Again, we don't know where it's going to be located, so I'm thinking we don't know that answer yet.
We had discussed that, and we will have to review the town hall's current system and see if it might be beneficial to combine LED, whether that was big enough or if that should be upgraded.
Isn't that gonna depend also if it has to be moved back to
So
that?
we'll keep
town?
the building first.
So the building, was the building location actually going to change, or the hill was just going
Well, if we keep the hill, the building would have to be moved.
to? Okay, 'cause I thought it was the parking spaces that we were talking the other day.
No, it was,
It's actually further back still?
it would have to be further back to be behind the hill that it currently sits on now.
Okay.
Once you do that, then you gotta worry about the police activities as far as their part.
Oh, yes.
So we're talking about the hill that DPW's got half tore down already.
Yes,
Mhm.
which I brought forward to the Historical Preservation Society yesterday, and told them that they didn't want to walk the site. When I mentioned that to them, they told me, and this was off the cuff in the meeting, that that is part of the historical district, that hill, and we should not be removing the hill. That's where this is coming from, at least the meeting question. I was
So-
told that it's historical.
They don't
And
have
I'm not
any
good
permits.
geographically,
They don't have any authority over this, but they're telling you you can't remove the hill. Who says the hill's been there for 200? This is just ludicrous.
Right, I don't,
Right,
I don't get,
I'm not sure the hill's been there, I kind of thought that
So,
hill kind of got there
is
when we
the
did
hill
the...
police gonna come and,
These are the questions that the
I don't
Historical
get it.
Preservation Society brought to us while I was standing out here with them yesterday
This-
afternoon.
This came up 40 years ago when they proposed the original
exactly,
construction.
so
The hill was.
the DPW's tore it half down
It's
already.
At the ridge line where
Nobody's
you can see
bothered
it, it's completely leveled on the top half.
Yeah,
Nobody knows this. Nobody can see it.
From Howard Street, you don't know that the hill is half gone from the backside.
But it is.
Now,
But it
this,
is.
where they're saying we need to position it now, portion of the building, is that going to affect DPW? And we're still waiting to put up our lovely
Wash
wash
bay.
bay that we're holding off on for 3 years because we're waiting for the building. Is that going to affect where everything's going to go? I'm not
Doesn't have-
geographically.
The hill is gonna affect it completely, to the point you may not even be able to do it on this piece of property.
Right,
Yeah.
There's-
Affect the
So-
building itself.
so I guess at this point in time, we gotta wait for Mark to figure out
Denise,
what their jurisdiction over us is.
You got a question here.
Mr. Dillon, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Dillon, Mrs. Ryder had her hand up first.
No, I was
Mrs.
just gonna say, I dropped some electronic stuff off a couple of days ago. And I was surprised that I could see the back of the Aylesworth house where they're pushing like a driveway through. So that portion of the hill is kaput.
Where you go?
Mr. Dillon.
from my memory, looking at where the building was, where you have the building, have the building situated on the drawing. You're saying that it's possible you have to push the building back if they're trying to salvage this historic hill? It would have to get pushed back?
Yes.
But if you, if I remember right,
We don't have much room to push further
you're
back.
20 feet off the supper shed right now with a parking lot, so,
And we've got to fit enough spaces for their vehicles.
As well as public access and public parking.
That's
so you'd
all.
be putting the building where the proposed
Secure
parking lot.
parking lot is.
You're gonna either take the highway department or take the field. Which would include the showroom.
If we push it any further back.
Yeah.
Correct.
You go to the other side of the building, you're gonna lose that.
Gonna lose what property?
Fairgrounds. The fairgrounds.
The fairgrounds.
Yeah.
Oh,
Which would be a loss.
excuse me, Mr. Savazio,
You're right,
that's a
you're right.
personal opinion.
Yes, it is. And it stands well.
Okay,
So
so,
what do we have to do now? We have to
well,
wait for
I'm looking here too, and it says, which is, and I do want to apologize if I sound like I was on the attack, but you can understand our frustration at this point.
We're equally as frustrated.
I'm reading here that from the time we provide the information to ERA, he will need approximately 60 days to produce a new site plan and then an additional 30 days. So we're talking, you know, I can't.
That's if you want to have a price on a septic ahead of time, if you want to avoid that. Again, I've said this many times, there's a larger picture here than just the police station. Is the septic system going to be shared by multiple buildings? Is the parking lot going to be shared by multiple buildings? It's not a question like, we don't know. Jim can design a septic system tomorrow for this building. That's not a problem.
But
If the one for the town hall is not going to last, does it make more sense as a better investment for the town?
I
to share the septic
understand that,
system?
but
It'll
isn't
get
that-
bigger, but it's going to be serving more than one building. It could serve 2 to 3
Isn't that
buildings.
something that should have been taken into
Was
consideration over the
mentioned it
last 3
since
years?
day one.
I brought
Since
it
day
up
one.
at several meetings.
Yeah, it's got nothing to do with the
And
building.
we just had no answers for that.
I suggested the council put another committee together to do an oversight of the entire Foster Center project in the library. And we got some answers as far as a master plan, before we built a building in the middle of somewhere, a septic system that was gonna service it. You know, 2 years from now, they decided to put a library somewhere, we have to put their septic system.
This is like that, just going to know.
Excuse me, may I?
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Fazio, I didn't see you.
Let me throw a monkey wrench in this. Why don't you get out of the...
Thanks, we need another one.
No, this will solve your problems of space, okay? Obviously, you want to save the campground, or whatever that is. So how about the school? So you've got lots of land down there, you own it, it's not in the historic district, you have a building, have space for a septic system, the children don't use all that area, and that will solve all your problems of space constraints, and the building can go anyplace once you have a building.
Thank you.
And school security.
And access to Route 6 and 101, you're right, thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else from the committee, I mean, I don't even know where to go from here. I am truly frustrated, angry. I don't know.
But you saw what Situate did, they went to a spot where they owned the land and there were no problems.
Yeah, they're still
not using the building. Look,
Yeah, that's other
the
issues.
problems of how they built it and all that is not the problem of the ability to use the space.
I think you should appoint a council member to the committee tonight, give the committee a month to report back, let us have a meeting. Is that enough time?
Well, at this point,
You get a meeting together with
if
the committee,
we find
yeah.
out that the historical
Yeah.
commission has no authority,
Let me get that done.
then we're nearly ready to
We
go.
can appoint someone
Okay,
tonight.
but here we're going to Lane again. When can we have an answer?
Well, I said within a week out.
Okay.
We'll reach out to them and have someone get on that tomorrow.
I mean, it's frustrating, I'll be honest with you, Madam Chair, to volunteer for the town and then regret it every meeting you come to. I mean, I have date after date after date after date after date of delays, and we're not our fault. We took the public's concerns into consideration that Situate was gonna merge with Foster, which turned out not to be true. And that was left in the town council's lap, and that has never gone anywhere since then. Yet continually, I hear that it's me blocking a Situate merger, which has nothing to do with me. Then we looked into the town hall, and Kelly probably remembers the day I came in, he measured all over the town hall, and I reported back with drawings and renderings that are all in the minutes somewhere, because that was supposed to go. And the only reason I got on this council, or on the committee to begin with, is we were staring down the barrel of a $4 million police station. Everybody remembers that, 10,000 square foot, $4 million police station. I went to the town hall, and I was complaining to Jane at the time, and she says, why don't you get on the committee? So I did. And I think, honestly, I was, humbled by the people on the committee, because you had a pretty solid committee for the whole time. And we've done the best we can with what we do. If you look at just the time to do surveys and draft plans and stuff, that's a year right there. You want to look at the time from our first meeting in June down to, or mid-May, May 19th, whatever it was, down to when we got done with the town council and the Situate thing and looking at the town hall, there's another 4 months. It just goes on like that. It wasn't, when we had something to do, something to look at, something to talk about, we had a meeting.
Mr. Dillon.
If I remember correctly, the $4.1 million preliminary plan obtained by our former police chief was done prior to the building committee.
Absolutely.
And that idea, the concept of utilizing the town hall, that preliminary drawing was bullshit, because it was a standalone 9,000 plus square foot building slid against the town hall. So the concept of using the square footage within the town hall went by the wayside in 3 minutes, and we came back with a 9,000 square foot building. The only thing different from it, it was leaning against the existing town hall. So the idea of using the town hall, that idea was never looked at.
Actually, it was.
Actually, I spent a lot of time with it.
We both did, and we came back, and there were plans in the minutes somewhere, where I went through, I measured all the square footage in the building, came back with what I thought would be a good addition and how we could make it work. There's a lot of people on the committee that are pretty intelligent. They know a lot of things, and they didn't think that the way it was gonna work. So we moved in a different direction. And
I actually had the opportunity to see a mock-up of what could be done with the lower level of the town hall, which was pretty interesting, but that never came
Well,
forward.
I never saw that.
Okay. There's a couple of things that I need to mention. We had a phone call made to the state fire marshal, probably about a year ago, that Mr. Torchy and I had to attend. They gave us a lengthy list of things that we were in violation of. Gave us a time frame to complete those lengthy lists. Some of them, they gave us a pass on because it would be far too costly to correct. Part of that agreement was that we would be bringing this building, right? We said that we had a building committee and that they were working on it, that we were going to be having a financial town meeting and they were going to bring this forward, and they said, okay, fine. Well, now we're at the point where they're not knocking yet, but whoever made the first phone call might make another call, and then what are we going to do? That's my concern. That's where my frustration and anger comes in, is because we have spent a lot of money, and rightfully so, on the police station. We needed to make some, it's deplorable there. I mean, things need to be done there. We did those things. Now we need to move forward. That being said, it's been requested that we appoint a council member. I neglected to mention that Ms. Hors had contacted me earlier in the week. She is not able to attend tonight's meeting. Mr. Cardillo contacted me tonight saying he could not come to the meeting. I did ask Ms. Hors, knowing she wasn't going to be here, if she would like to be on the committee. She said, no, thank you. That being said, since Mr. Cardillo is here, I'm not going to text him now, so is there anybody that's present that would like to be on the building committee?
Well, first of all, would you like me to move it up on the agenda?
Oh, I thought we had.
I think that
No,
was a
that's-
Oh,
separate.
that just, I
Okay.
grouped it all together.
So
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to move item I, appointment of town council member to the police building committee up to this point in our meeting.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. So now, appointment of a council member to the police building committee.
I'm surprised that
It's a funny place to be, you should jump right on board. It's
I
a
don't have the
wonderful,
knowledge
wonderful thing.
of building stuff, so.
Apparently we don't either.
Mrs. Ryder.
No, I just think
I
that,
thought you were volunteering to be.
no, that Mr. Cardillo, being a past DPW director, maybe would have some, you know,
Well,
I
he
mean,
knew what
if
was on the
he
agenda.
would be offered the,
So it's
I would
Position.
say
a good
it's on
idea
the-
to appoint him while he's not here.
I'm sure it's been done, I don't know.
Well, I wouldn't do that to somebody. He knew it was on the agenda. He did not, in his text to me, did not say, I would be interested in, so I'm assuming he is not interested in. Would you assume that?
Okay.
Would you assume
Me.
that? Am I assuming? It's not you, I could be on it. I'd be,
Well, be on it then if you want to be
oh,
on
I
it.
was waiting for the two of you to say.
I'll make a motion to appoint Denise DeFranco to the police station building committee.
Second.
Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're entirely welcome.
I might take out some of my frustration. All right.
So now,
Works for me.
once Mark gets that answer and gets that answer to Mr. Walsh, and once he gets that answer to you within a week or so, can you call a meeting before 30
We're talking about
days?
schedule one right now,
Okay.
March 21st.
I know you said you'd like to give.
Well, I like to give 30 days because I don't, there's people who sit in these chairs and complain they weren't given enough notice to come to the
Too
meeting.
bad. We didn't have to give them
No, I'm with you.
Exactly.
I just-
40 hours.
Exactly, buddy.
Let's get going.
Right,
Let's do
just do it.
Let's just get it
Okay, I'm good with that. I'll do it in 48
You're
hours.
saying March
March
21st?
21st.
That's a budget workshop.
Yes.
This building will be utilized, I will be at a budget workshop.
There's
Sorry about that.
Every
Every Thursday in March is a budget workshop.
Can you meet on a different night?
I can.
Tuesday, or, I'm asking the committee, do you have to stick with Thursday
Yeah, I
nights?
mean, I'm out of town a lot, but I'll work around it, we'll figure it out. What
Give me a
days?
date.
yeah,
Any but a Thursday.
I think most of my Mondays are good, I'm good March 11th.
which is,
Monday,
Conservation
March
Committee,
11th.
they meet here at 7 o'clock, but we could meet someplace else. Can meet at Town Hall or Townhouse,
Town hall's probably gonna be warmer.
Warmer, that's fine.
okay?
That'll be enough room.
Does that work? March
11th.
11th,
Oh, 7.
7 o'clock, Mr. Walsh?
6:30 is the standard, but we can do it at 7.
No, we were just asking.
So if Mark finds out that they have nothing to say about the building, then will we be ready to put it out and get,
If we skip the septic issue altogether and just worry about that down the road, I don't know if that's a good idea, but we can certainly do that. We still have to apply the survey into the plan. So we still have to, now that they have the survey, they haven't built the survey into the plan yet to make sure everything is gonna work the way it's supposed to work.
but I mean, at least we can start moving forward doing something.
Yeah. well,
Once we have that
yeah.
answer.
If he says they have no jurisdiction, Jim can start on it immediately.
I mean,
Mr. Robinson, what are your thoughts on it?
We can design a septic for one building.
My thought
in size.
is just that if you allow them to give you some input as to what it should be in their opinion, even though they can't say no and stop you in your tracks, on the other hand, they may be helpful. So I mean, you're gonna catch more flies with sugar than you are with vinegar.
That's right.
And
I'm hearing
it's
that.
real easy to just say, listen, what do you think? And then you either take their advice or you don't.
especially if they can help us with funding.
Right, right. Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Thank you, Mr. Patrick.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for coming out.
I'm not sure where we go with that, though. So what are we saying?
I think it
Let me-
depends on.
You're gonna have a meeting.
Let me figure it
No,
out.
I understand that, but he was just saying that we should listen to some of their advice, which is good. I'm
Well,
good either
we-
way, I don't care, but I'm just saying that.
Okay,
Well, let me
you
figure out
want
whether
me
you
to,
have.
you want me to call Roberta?
Hmm,
I mean, I can talk to her as impartial. She knows I'm not a town official.
right. I'm just saying, if we were to do what they say, and it doesn't matter to me either way, it would be a complete redesign of the building that they designed. So I'm not sure whether that's.
I'm not saying to go there, but they may have some suggestion. You're talking about putting in a sewerage system that will handle a number of buildings. They may have something that they've done elsewhere that they can just say, look, try this.
This septic question wasn't from them, it was actually from the architect. Because we're trying to figure out whether he's gonna draw, yeah, whether they're gonna draw a standalone septic system for the one building, or if we're gonna incorporate the building.
We're gonna need more space.
It's really just the aesthetics and the location of both the historic commission and.
Mrs. Ryder?
I was gonna say, I think, having gone to some meetings, it was always the intent that it would, that the appearance of the building would try to fit in
Mhm.
with a historic district.
Yes.
You're not gonna have something.
That's why I'm surprised that we're getting pushed out.
I know, but maybe they don't know that. Do you know what I mean?
Well, we told them,
You
yes,
told
it was pretty clear that we basically cut the size of the building in half, put a lot below grade
Right.
for that exact reason. That's exactly the reason we did it.
Okay, so we're going to meet on March 11th. Mark is going to get information to us regarding what accountability we have to them, and we can go from there. We also have a new chief who may have different input, if you will. So,
I did reach out to the chief, and he said
Yes.
you were good with the design as is, right? So
yeah,
we should be good there.
okay. Thank you for coming out, I appreciate it. Again, I apologize, but I am extremely frustrated.
As are we.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on, we're going to move back up to our consent agenda.
I make a motion, we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on to old business, Charter Review Committee, Economic Development Committee. We have a list before us of people that have submitted their names for each. I didn't know what the council in the past, we had talked about meeting with them as a whole as we did previously. We met with another group, when we were doing the boards and things. So I didn't know whether we wanted to do that with this group at the next meeting. Some people I do not know.
Yeah, there's a few names that I don't recognize either, and I don't know if Cheryl and Joe would like to have input on this.
Cheryl said
as
she
well.
would.
She wants to be
She
here.
wants, she would like
She's
to
the one
meet
that
with
wants
me.
to-
She wanted to meet with everybody.
On both
Yes,
committees,
yes.
so, let me just see where we're at.
So,
Ask how many people on charter review?
on Charter Review, Mr. Savazio, you've done a good job. You've gotten 4 people to join us.
That's it?
Yes, I know. I appreciate getting phone calls from people saying you're soliciting for their
Mrs.
help.
DeFranco, the last Charter Commission committee, it was very helpful that the town clerk was there because there was a lot of housekeeping kinds of things that she knew about. It happened to be,
I have no
the last
jurisdiction,
time.
I have no jurisdiction over the town clerk. I will
Right.
leave it to her
But
discretion.
also, we also had the solicitor once we got into it, and we really started formulating these changes to the charter. There was a lot of stuff that was already at the state level, so all we had to do is refer to state law, which we didn't know.
And I'm sure that you would be able to access Mr. Torgy and Ms. Achille, but they would not be attending the meetings.
Okay.
Excuse me, my question was how many total?
Total,
Four
Four.
including you.
Four?
4, including
So,
you.
I don't know, I mean, that's what you're gonna get, so you could appoint us tonight and we could actually get started.
I prefer to wait. Thank you,
Okay,
Mr.
have a good
Savazio. So we will wait and we'll have it at our next council meeting. You should ask them to come. And do you want to make a motion to that effect?
I'll make a motion to continue the Charter Review Committee appointments and the Economic Development Advisory Committee appointments to our next meeting.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. And if you would contact all of them, we could meet at 6:30 and have one group at 6:30 and one group at 6:45. How's that? Does that work for everybody? If we met at 6:30 and then have 15 minutes? Maybe. The economic development might need more.
So you want to start at 6?
Does that work? What?
It's fine.
Okay, 6
Run
o'clock,
And what is the date of that meeting?
March 14th.
Isn't there already a budget thing before that meeting?
We have a budget thing at 5. Okay. Thank
Let's
you.
pack it in. Thank you.
Thank you for reminding us. If you have them come at 7.
On the charter
and then
commission, I
we
have
can-
no idea if we're economic development.
Thank you. So, thank you for reminding us this is
At 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock, they will come. The next item is our solar farms presentations. We had talked about this before, having these various solar farms come before us after they've been through the planning and zoning, come to us and present that we might request of them certain things. I understand from the planner that there's been some pushback from some of the solar companies. I don't know where we want to stand, if we want to move forward with that, or
Pushback meeting, they don't want to come
they
in
don't
as
want
a
to come.
presentation
It's
of what
going to
they're
cost them
doing.
a lot of money. Yeah, well, they're making a lot of money. Yeah, that was one particular company who we requested to come before us and then didn't show.
Just one.
Yeah, just one.
If they're interested in not
Is
getting
it
this.
because they've been here so many times, or?
Well, they've been invited several times and have not shown up for us. They've gone, I'm not sure how many,
Yes.
yeah, they're not called up anymore, they're Hartford.
Okay.
So,
So they want to put a solar farm, but they don't want to come to us.
right, so what's the pleasure of the council?
So what do you want? I mean,
Do you want a motion to
just,
say we want them to come before
can
us?
we request them to come? Can we do we mandate them to come? I think,
You can have them come.
can we make them come?
Well,
Or-
they've already been approved by the board.
They have to go before you one
That's
more
what I-
time,
that's
am
what
I
I'm
correct?
saying.
One more time?
They're coming
I don't
before
know
the
how many you're
March
talking
20th.
about. The one
Yes.
has to come to us
One
more
has to
time.
come before
That's it.
March 20th. They're coming before the planning board for final approval, is that it?
It's preliminary and then final. There's 2 more.
Oh, there's 2 more meetings.
So are they doing a presentation at your meeting?
Yes.
So you guys, if you wanted to go
So
to that.
We could
just
go
go
there.
to their meeting.
Okay. Can we at that meeting say anything?
You'd have to have a joint
We
meeting.
have a
Right.
joint meeting on the 20th. Thank you.
So what would you do them individually? And how-
Right, as they come before the planning board, when they get to a
So
certain
we'd have to
point,
go there and
well,
have a joint meeting?
or they could come to us. We've asked them to come to us in the past, and they've been on the agenda, and then they canceled. So,
So do we need any action on that? or-
So what's,
Yeah.
what is it, March 20th?
Planning board?
March 20th is when they're coming to the planning board.
Yes.
Okay.
And they're called
Hartford, it's called Hartford. They're not called Hartford, they're Hartford something, do you know?
Hartford Solar.
Hartford Solar is now their name. Mrs. Ryder.
I know I asked this before, but once they receive final approval, they've gone through all the hoops and everything at the planning board level, and they receive a final approval, can the council then come in and place more restrictions?
No, because I mean, they've already had it from these guys. The council has to come in before their final approval is done.
Right.
Okay.
That's why we've been asking them
To come
to
before
come
you
before they got the
they
final.
go through the entire process.
Right, that's why we've been asking them, and they, I think we've invited them 3 times so far,
and they've canceled.
and they've canceled. Mr. Carey?
I think the problem, and I know I was chair and we had they had requested this. And what happened was, because our ordinance doesn't
State that
make
they
it
have to
state
come.
that they have to go before the council, they really aren't obligated to do so. It's just a goodwill gesture.
Yeah, that was my
And
question.
so, you know,
We can't-
without changing the ordinance to allow the possibility, you know, so we could put it in there, if the need arises, it wouldn't be every
Yeah,
application, but if we get certain ones that are more controversial, you know, we could require that
so if,
on a case-to-case basis, but at this time, it's really not required. And as far as doing anything on the 20th, that's not even possible. It's been advertised already for 2 weeks, the meetings, you know, it's a public hearing.
we
And,
can just,
Go with the citizens.
we can go as a citizen, but we can't speak.
not as a council.
No, not as a council,
I mean,
yeah.
and as a joint
No.
meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Sabazio?
Yeah, I don't know if this is the place to say it, but I'll give it a try. The planning board has a responsibility to the town of Foster. And when they review projects, they should do cost-benefit analysis to the town, right? Not to hurt anybody's feelings, but the planning board in the past, I read our charter responsibilities to you. Our planning board in the past has acted more like an anti-development board versus a development board. And we have a responsibility to ownership and to the town through cost-benefit analysis. So I think the council should come to us and ask us to review the ordinance, which that's what we're gonna need to do,
Review what ordinance, Mr.
our
Sabazio?
solar farm ordinance.
Now we should review it. At the meeting, at the public hearing, you said no way. Okay.
No,
As long as I get- I'm not gonna let you
may I
on.
finish, okay? Because what was brought up at that meeting was a moratorium, right? And what I said to you at the time was, pass what you have in front of you and add to it. You still don't have anything.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear
You
you.
still do not have any ordinance, or nor do you have a meeting to push forward an ordinance. So if you
I
send it
believe
back
it's on tonight's agenda, Mr. Sabazio.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
I didn't read the agenda, so
Oh.
I came in late. You're doing a great job.
Thank you, Mr. Sabazio. So we continue with the solar farm presentations and what's the pleasure of the council?
I don't know, do we need to take any action at all? If we can't force them to come before us, I don't think we need to do anything.
Okay. Moving on, animal control ordinance. We did have our public hearing, we had our first reading. Mr. Marcelin is here, he had sent me some,
Some changes.
yes, Mr. Marcelin is the one who gave us suggestions
Oh.
after discussing.
I'm sorry.
Yes. After discussing with Ms. Howard, some suggestions, and I know that Ms. Terry has gotten in touch with the town clerk regarding some concerns that they have. So within your packet, you have the animal control ordinance, and it does say, E kept under command of Heal. And the suggestion that Mr. Moslin had was, and I'm not sure, do I call you Mr. Moslin here or Officer Moslin? I'm not sure.
It's up to you, Denise.
Okay. Aaron works best, yes. Not enough people or dogs are trained well enough for this to be acceptable. And I know that was Terry's concern, Betty Lou's concern too. And I spoke with Joanna, and she tends to agree with you that heel is not a term that can be used.
Well, other people use different commands for their animals, so I agree with that.
And when I was having a discussion today with Mrs. Dillon, is that I had 2 dogs. One I knew would heel, one I knew wouldn't. I kept that wouldn't on a leash, and the one that I knew would heel and I had control over, she could walk with me. So are we saying that it's the responsibility of the owner to know their dog's temperament, or do we want to delete that completely?
Can I say
Yes.
something? I feel that we can keep it in, and I agree 100% with everything you just said. But I think we should extend this sentence and begin this sentence with maybe not this way, but similar to this. E, walking with a person off your property, the dog is controlled by the person using a leash or a lead or kept under the control of the command of heel. Just give them the opportunity. How
You have
most
that written
people-
down?
I wrote it down, yeah.
Can you submit it to us right now?
If you want, yes.
Thank
I
you.
can. Okay.
Could you say verbal command rather than heel in case it's in German or something?
Yeah. Yep.
It might be.
What do you think about that, Aaron and Pat? Just change heels to a verbal command?
A verbal command.
Okay.
And Betty Lou, you said you had that written down?
Yes.
Can you bring it up right now?
Right now?
Yes. Put you right on the spot.
That's fine, and you can, I'm just gonna grab another one of these.
Okay, thank you.
But we can have it.
Thank you. So, we'll pass it down to you, Mike. The other suggestions that you had were the fierce dog. We have a vicious dog board, am I correct?
No.
When we have a vicious dog, where do they go?
That would fall under Rhode Island State Law, Chapter 413-1.
But don't we have
It's
vicious dog
determined by the
hearings?
state. What's that?
Don't we have vicious dog hearings?
We do.
And
And we contact the SPCA, and we have to have approval either through the police chief or the animal control officer to hold the vicious dog hearing. And then the SPCA usually will bring somebody or put somebody in their place to come to the meeting, same with the chief of police. And then usually it's an outside animal control officer from whether it's Gloucester, Coventry. Coventry attends quite a few of those. But the difference is when you have it listed as like the town's panel, you just open yourself up, as far as I'm concerned, as the lawsuits, where it states in the state law that hearing officers shall have immunity. So there's a difference there when you're adding in a panel that doesn't need to happen, because we're gonna follow the state law. I have a copy of that if you'd like that.
I would, thank you.
Okay.
So hearing these suggestions and,
We skipped one to these. On the first page, Aaron suggested that,
he said it's
on
unnecessary.
item E, as long as the town foster is under contract with the town of Situate for animal control, the town foster will follow the fines of violations enforced by Situate. You want that removed?
He felt that was
Well, I think
unnecessary.
it's unnecessary. And what happens if, when this contract is up, you guys find, you either want your own animal control officer back,
Right.
or you want a contract with Gloucester or Coventry or whoever gives you a better deal.
Right.
And now this is in there where if we delete this, now it's not there anymore, and you have your own set of fines,
Yeah.
which, these fines are pretty much what everybody uses in the state. So,
I was gonna say, we took it from you
yes,
verbatim.
yep,
Right.
So-
absolutely.
I did speak to Joanna, in regards to that one particular, as I mentioned to Aaron, and she felt that it was needed, I don't know.
I have to talk to her about it.
Okay.
But I can see his point, if that, then you have to redo the ordinance in a 2 or 3
Right.
years or whatever, whenever your contract is up.
Correct.
I'm wondering if we want to, since we've had these suggestions made to us, if we want to, what did I do? Oh, I gave it to you.
Yes, I can.
If you have yours, if we could table this and then
Reformat it so you can
reformat it
understand
so
it.
that we can
Yeah.
put it, we would not need to go back to a public hearing, am I correct?
Wait a second, if you continue this to the next meeting.
Okay. So, could I have a motion for that?
Make a motion, the animal control ordinance continues till next meeting.
So I would need all this stuff.
Second.
Yes.
What he did, what he asked, so I give it to you.
Discussion, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Joanna has a copy of the, with the notes. And if you have,
If you want to.
I don't-
and then you can give it to the chief, to Mark, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the marijuana ordinance. We have that before us, we have had a public hearing, we have had a first reading. I have not heard, thank you.
Thank you.
I have not heard anything in regards to the marijuana ordinance, any suggestions and changes. There was much discussion about it at the public hearing. What is the pleasure of the council?
Now make a motion to adopt the marijuana ordinance as presented.
Second.
Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's adopted. Thank you. Thank you for your input. Moving on to our solar farm ordinance slash moratorium. We have before us the solar ordinance, the changes that were made, and then we have also in our packet a moratorium ordinance. What is the pleasure of it? There has been much discussion with this solar ordinance, and it was very heated. We all have received phone calls. Taking Mr. Savazio's suggestion that we adopt this solar ordinance and then go on to a moratorium, would that be applicable, or do we,
Is that backwards?
I don't know, that's what I'm asking. And Mr. Savazio is not
Seems like
here,
that's backwards if you're gonna approve this one
and then put,
and then put a moratorium on.
I think the issue with, seems the consensus the last meeting was is that people wanted to see some more
changes.
additional changes made, and that's why we're going to put the possible moratorium on, so you have ample time to do it before someone else gets another project on the board.
In the pipeline, yeah.
Right, because that's your problem. So I think if you do the moratorium, it gives you that 6-month period to try to get something that maybe is more acceptable to your townspeople.
So we wouldn't be able to, according to this, accept any applications
Right.
until August 27th.
Whatever the 6 months is,
That's the date that's
Yeah.
in here.
Mhm.
and that gives you that opportunity to, not rush through something and then maybe make an inadvertent mistake and then you're paying for it for a long time.
Right, I mean, I did after public hearing, I did go back and look at Gloucester's.
Yeah.
That was brought up. I did look at Gloucester's ordinance, and I thought it was very thorough. There was a lot in there that I liked and I thought could be applicable to us.
Do we need 6 months?
Well, I mean, you may not, maybe just say
I
3
can
months.
set it here, that's what I'm saying.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think a lot of towns do 6 months, but you can do less.
I think 6 months gives us a
I
good
mean-
time to look at it and get information out there.
I mean, the issue you have is what if it takes you a month or so to get the thing up and running back on council agenda, and then there's a lot of uproar again, and now you want to take it back, and then now you're under the gun. So, I mean, it's up to you.
Well, you can lift a moratorium, right, once something else is approved, you can.
Yeah, that just gives you, you can't go beyond it, but you can.
Right.
Exactly.
You
You
can
can
lift it
go
once
short.
it's done, so if we get it done and then everyone's happy with it, or as happy as can be under the circumstances, then yeah, then you lift it. But it gives a breathing room to the town, I mean, like I've said in the past, I mean, this stuff is really, came fast and furious in this state, and it's really kind of taking everyone by, surprise, and obviously planning board members have a lot more knowledge than the rest of us do about these subjects, and so what happens is that you've got to get these ordinances up to date quickly, and it's hard to do that, and these developers are always, seems to be like above the curve on stuff, so you've got to really be online, and like I've said before, the federal government and your state government and your state federal legislatures, your congressmen and your senators want this stuff, so, that's the issue you're presented with. So, I mean, I
I
think.
do know, I did speak to the planner in regards to this, and she would like to have an opportunity to work on it alone, with input from the council, before bringing it forward to the planning board. So I'm not sure if that would need to be part of.
That's her job, though.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that's what you're paying her for.
Excuse me.
Okay, I just want, one second, this is
No
why I had
problem.
her hand
Yeah, no.
first. Would we need to read this aloud, it has to be read resolution?
No, it's online, isn't it?
It's on.
Basically, essentially, what you're saying is that you're gonna hold off everything until,
Right.
at the latest 6 months, and if it gets done before then you remove it.
Okay. Mrs. Riley, how do you?
I've heard different numbers, but how many are already, quote, in the pipeline that would not be affected by a moratorium?
There is one that is Shippey Schoolhouse and correct me if I'm wrong, Shippey Schoolhouse and Route 6.
That's
That-
already.
Right,
That's already been approved.
101.
They stopped. There's the one on 101 that is in the process.
Yeah.
And I don't know of any others at
You don't
this
have
point in
any
time.
that have come before us.
So
Do
there's
you know
no
of any
there
others that
affected.
are
I think there are, but I honestly, I can't answer the question.
I'm not sure that there are any
I
that
think
have
the
applied.
planner has some preliminaries, whether that means in the pipeline.
They haven't gotten all their
No,
paperwork in when I
if
talked to
they
this.
came in and, if they, I know they approached the planner, I know there are a couple that have spoken to her. We haven't
Right.
had any official meetings.
No, and they
There
haven't
hasn't been
submitted
a
what they
pre-app.
needed yet.
We had a couple pre-apps a couple of years ago, but I think those projects just,
Went by the wayside.
yeah.
But she,
So I
because
don't
I asked
know
her
if they haven't come
specifically.
before the board, does that constitute not in the pipeline? Because
That's the question.
there was some questions that if they even went to the planner and.
They
you
have
know,
not submitted, according to
Okay.
Jennifer, they have not submitted
an
the
application.
required paperwork.
Okay.
They've spoken to her, but
So
there's
that
nothing
should-
formal.
So that should cover us, I hope.
Right, right.
Like,
Mrs. Sabazia?
Yeah, why don't you skip the step of the planning board? And you have the planner report directly to you on this and put in.
You might not have been in the room when we were just discussing that.
No, I wasn't, so I'm just, if I missed it, I'm sorry, but I think right now you have a pretty good idea of what you want. You want us, I was gonna bring up a moratorium next meeting anyhow, but just to get this stuff solved, you have a pretty good idea what you want. Let the planner work with you, let the lawyer do his work, and you'll skip a couple of weeks to a month of back and forth between the council and the planner.
Thank you. So, the ordinance, do we table it or do we vote it down?
I make a motion, we table the ordinance to a future
Do we
meeting.
table or we continue it?
Well, either way, continue it.
Because it's a public hearing, don't we have to continue?
We continue it to a
Continue.
Future meeting.
Future meeting.
Second.
Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The solar moratorium
For 6 months.
for 6 months.
I make a motion that we use a solar moratorium until we're done with the
For
solar
6
farm
months.
ordinance, the changes we want to make.
Not longer than 6 months.
Not longer than 6 months.
All right, not longer than 6 months.
or until whatever the date is on that.
It's August
August
27th.
27th. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. Oh, I wasn't sure.
No, I was just wondering about the wording of the motion, because I was looking to see exactly what the title of this document is, because you have to sign it.
Yeah. Is there
If that was acceptable.
any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Contract negotiations with DPW. At a previous meeting, I had volunteered to be on the contract negotiations for, I forgot what the title of them are. Looking at my schedule and now the police building committee, I do not feel I can put the time and effort into it that would be necessary. So I'm going to withdraw my name and suggest Mr. Stone take my place. If there's,
I'll make a motion that Chris Stone takes Dee's place in the negotiation committee for the DPW.
I'll second that. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. So you will be joining Mrs. Rogers on that, and I will send a letter to the gentleman who sent to me. The next is recognition of boards and committees. We had discussed in the past, and I wasn't sure whether we made a formal motion or if it's even needed to have recognition. It had been suggested previously by the planning board. Many of us during our campaigning had discussed it as far as recognizing the various boards and committees. I would like to see that we invite a board a month, present them with just a little certificate, thanking them for their time and effort. As we know, it takes a lot and it's volunteering. So I didn't know what.
I don't think we need a motion for that, right?
I just wanted to make sure everybody
Just put
was
it on
on
the
it.
agenda.
Right. Thank you. Moving on to Recreation Department.
May I suggest, there's people that constantly come and go and have put in years, and it may be good in the community, since this is a goodwill thing, to send people who've been off the board recently to that.
Good
Thank you for your
suggestion.
service. You know, you get it out in the community, you may get more people talking about service to the community.
Good suggestion, thank you. Recreation Department appointment. We have before us a email from Allison. Oh, are you here, Allison? Oh, good.
I knew you were gonna stumble.
Thank you. And how do you say your last name, Allison?
Well, we say Wojtasek, but in Mother Poland it's closer to Wojtaszek, so as long as you don't put a ski on the end.
Okay.
No
I'm just gonna go with
Allison.
Allison.
Yeah, Allison's fine.
Okay. We have an email here from Allison requesting to be on the Recreation Department. She has her letter here. It states that her name is Allison and she's very interested in a volunteer position in the Foster Recreation Department. My family, husband Matt, and our 5 kids, Evan, Serenity, Tony, Clara, and James, moved to Foster last summer, and one of the first town events we went to was the Family Fun Day at Woody Loudon. It was awesome. We also had fun at the Trunk and Treat and the community yard sale. She's a pharmacist and have worked in a variety of settings and have held management positions, but I've stepped out of the workforce to care for our kids and work for our home business, Griffith Shaving Goods. I'd love to be a part of the team that organizes these events. I'm organized, enthusiastic, and can work independently. Thank you for your consideration. And she's here, so if anybody
I
has
make a
questions.
motion that we appoint Allison to the Recreation Committee.
You had no questions for her?
No.
Do you
I'll
have a
second
second?
it, and then if anybody has any questions.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions?
No, I mean, it sounds like she's been to
Yes.
a few things.
She's
You
got
have
5
a bunch of
kids,
kids,
so-
you're invested.
And we bought our dream house, so we're never gonna leave.
Oh,
so.
perfect, perfect. So, anyone, any further discussion? Thank you. We had a motion, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. moving on to Forster Gloucester Regional Budget
Ding, ding, ding.
presentation. Thank you for waiting so patiently. You have a copy of it in your,
I got it.
okay.
Let's see if it opens. The last two haven't opened.
Does anybody want a paper copy? I do. There's a copy.
We got a paper copy too, right?
Yes.
I already got
Is he
one.
opening it?
I have one, thank you.
I have a copy.
Thank you, Betty Lou. There was concern about the number of bars.
Ah,
Oh, I was going to ask you about that. I'm glad you brought it up.
I figured it would come up.
You figured it would, huh? Yeah. I was going to ask you what that was.
You just go to your list and you double click. You just go to the list and you double click. Doesn't have to go through that.
You go to your, it's not done, download. Sue says if you go to your list and double click, it will open up right away. That's what Sue says.
Sue's wrong.
Dr. Bonds, we have all our attention on you.
Thank you. As we do annually, we've come before you to just give a preview of the Forster Gloucester Regional School District budget. I know council members have attended a number of the budget preparation workshops we've had, and for the general public, we will actually be having a formal public hearing on our budget this coming Tuesday, March 5th at 8 p.m. in the Pontiac High School Library. And then the budget will actually be formally voted upon by the residents of Forster and Gloucester on Tuesday, March 19th in the Pontiac High School auditorium, and that meeting will begin at 7 p.m. So I'll do just a little bit of a high-level overview. And then I know you have the package, the budget in your package, and you may have some specific questions afterwards. That we are projecting an increase in state aid of about $350,000 or 7.66%. Local appropriations of $348,000. And this is just the general fund, so you see that that's a 2.53% increase. Some miscellaneous other expenses of $39,000. And then an increase in tuition revenue of $613,000, which is about a 27% increase. Corresponding to those revenues, which total $22,296,750, or an increase in total revenue of $1,350,000. We are also seeing our salaries line increase by $968,000. Our employee benefits increased by $291,000. Our educational programs increased by $231,000. And we also have a decrease in the central office facility operations of $50,000. And then district-wide facility operations, a decrease again of $89,000. All those taken together total $1,350,000 again change. And if you flip to the second page of the packet, it's the part that is important to the town for your budgeting practices. We're seeing a total increase across the overall budget, and for the local appropriation analysis, again, of $393,000 or 2.5%. So while we have expenses going up over 6%, we also have revenue from other sources going up as well. So at the local revenue that we'll be seeking and presenting to the community, assuming the school committee adopts this budget in this format, would be 2.5% of local appropriation increase. How that breaks up to the town of Forster, because there's a student population swing where general operations are done based on the amount of pupils that enroll in the community from Forster and the amount of people who enroll from the community of Gloucester. This fiscal year, when you do that with the proration adjustment from previous years, Foster will be seeing a $73,000 increase in student population swing, which is a change from what's you've been experiencing in the last few years. And as well, last year you saw an increase in debt service because of this timing of their evaluations. This time Gloucester has had their reevaluation, so the debt service, that means the mortgage payment on the two communities, paid towards the building project or the middle school that was built in the high school addition. That is done by the property values in the town, and you are seeing a $54,000 decrease for a total projected decrease of $128,000. On the community of Gloucester, they're seeing increases for those two for a total increase of $522,000. And your decrease plus their increase averages $393,000. I would be remiss if I didn't say it. You all have used very effective practices in the past where, although you're seeing a decrease, you have budgeted what the 2.5% would be in the past, so that when the swing comes the other way. And I'd be remiss if I didn't suggest that as a very effective budgetary practice again. And that's one I know your town has employed, but just feels my due diligence to at least say.
Thank you.
So that's the kind of general overview at the high end of what the budget is. I didn't know if you had any specific questions on line items. And I will say that the budget is again reinvesting in education. And as you go through the budget, you will see that there are some line items that have dropped substantially and other line items that have increased. We do have 10 State Department of Education approved pathways. And so what we have been doing is when there's a newer pathway, we invest in equipment over a couple of years. So what that means is if we're rolling out a new pathway, we'll buy the equipment and materials for year one in 1 year budget, and then the equipment and materials for year two in the second year's budget. So as we fully roll out a pathway, those line items will decrease and we'll reallocate it for some other place. So you do see some swings in individual line items, probably because in previous years we've invested in programs that we don't need to invest in again, or we're investing in programs we haven't in the past. So I'll pause because you have been through a number of the budget hearings, so I don't want to go on longer than I need to. It's just if people have specific questions, we can have the answer at this time.
Well, it's just Mr. Stone and I that have attended, so I don't know if Mrs. Rogers has anything.
While you're looking at it,
1 second. And I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time or not, but you did give us, and I did make a copy of the bill. How, if this does pass, how would that affect this budget and finances?
So I'll provide a little context, and then I'll say that the sponsor of the bill, so I'll give a little context for how this came about. A couple of the communities who, because of the, in 2014, the state adopted a career and technical education board that would approve career and technical education programs across the state. That's significantly changed where career and technical education is being offered. And so some communities that traditionally have received career and technical education students, like the Warwick Career and Technical Center, Woonsocket Career and Technical Center, Newport, they've seen a shift in their population. I would say that shift has been fairly heavy in the Warwick area. And so they work with their local representatives to submit a bill. And what that bill, as written, I don't believe that's passed, but as written, says that regional career and technical centers are best equipped to deliver career and technical education. Schools outside of those regional centers cannot have duplicate programs unless there's a demonstrated need for the duplicate program. And there's also currently that they would have an advisory board of the Regional Career and Tech Center have to approve any program that wasn't in that region. The bill went as far as to also say that there would be programs that were currently existing would have to be discontinued if they didn't have that approval or that need. Obviously, that would have a substantial impact on the Foster Gloucester Regional School District and the programs that we run. And as I testified in my written comments that I submitted, that process would also overrule local control of education. So that would mean that the governing boards of 7 communities for their regional centers could override what Smithfield wants to do in their own community, what Forster wants to do, what Gloucester wants to do, what Cumberland, what Lincoln. So even if you locally wanted to offer an engineering program with your school committee in your town, you would be prohibited from doing that. So that would have significant negative impacts on our community. I would say at review received fairly robust opposition. Members of our community, when they became aware of it, parents wrote letters to members of the HEW committee. Local business groups came and testified against it, local school departments. One of our students started a petition that in 24 hours received more than 2,300 signatures in opposition to the bill in a 24-hour period. So all of that resulted in legislators writing back to parents prior to the hearing even taking place, saying, we didn't mean that we were going to get rid of those programs. We will clearly grandfather students in. That was never our intent. The sponsor of the bill, Representative Shanley, specifically called me and said, that's not what we're intending to do. No one would think it's a good idea to discontinue programs. I said, that may be true, but page 3 of your bill, lines 13 to 15, specifically says you will be discontinuing programs. That's clearly not what we intended, so...
So if your program is already in place, it will continue.
Correct, but I'm
It's
saying...
not when these students graduate,
Correct.
you can't take any more. Which way is it?
So right now, I'm telling you, right now it says if you do not get approval from the regional board, you would have to discontinue. I'm telling you that Representative Stanley, when he called me, said that's not what the bill was meant to do. Greg Amore on the committee, when they heard it, said, because other communities complained about that, said, so if you're saying if we remove that provision, it would be a good thing. And I will tell you, in his verbal testimony, introducing the bill for hearing, Representative Stanley did say that they would grandfather students in, they wouldn't go into effect immediately, that wasn't their intent. So I'm just saying the bill as written is not the bill. I'm pretty confident there will be modifications. The other thing that I do believe, and what I was told, is that what they're really trying to do is eliminate duplication. This bill does not optimally address that. It's a nice way to say it. What I was told is that they're looking to say, if you have, for example, a computer science program in Warwick, kids can leave for programs that are not computer science, but kids couldn't leave for a program that is computer science. So if you had a state-approved computer science program in Warwick, you couldn't go to Situate or Forster Gloucester for a state-approved computer science program. That's what I was told the intent was. I will tell you unequivocally, that's not what the language says.
So that was about tuitioning kids in, it's to
Correct.
prevent our community from tuitioning kids or other
It
communities.
is meant to prevent our community from tuitioning kids in, correct? But not just ours, North
No,
Kingstown,
right,
Westerly, Narragansett. According to State Department of Education statistics, in the last 4 years, more than 4,000 additional children enrolled in career and technical education than previously were. I will tell you, as I testified to the legislator, that the HEW committee, in 2005, they actually passed a state law that set a goal for every single community in the state, meaning every single high school, to have 40% of the children enrolled in career and tech ed. So that was a legislative finding and a charge for every community to get the 40%. We are at 40%, many other communities are not. The state average is about 20% across the state, but a lot of communities are moving. I also said it would negatively impact the economic development of our state. So instead of a state-level board, and the Governor's Workforce Board, and the Rhode Island Commerce Commission, and others trying to say, geez, we need computer science everywhere, or we need construction workers everywhere, they would make, currently that bill says 7 local communities will get to decide what happens in the state. I personally don't think that'll pass the test of time. I will tell you that the people who got the original 2014 law passed were there testifying saying this is a bad idea. Because it would strip the state CTE board of, or dilute some of their authority invested in local boards. So principally, I guess I'll close by saying it's an incredibly bad bill for Foster Gloucester and every other comprehensive high school that currently has career and tech programs, but I'm getting nothing but signals that that will change. And I should also say, at the present time, there is not a companion bill on the Senate side. So there's only been a bill introduced on the House side, and obviously that's something to
I
become
did
void.
look
in
for
the
it on the
House.
Senate side, I could not find it.
Right.
And just an aside, is it true, because of course there's rumors out there, is it true that we brought 3 busloads of students up to the area?
That is not a rumor, that is an absolute fact.
So we had 3, okay, 3 school buses?
3 school buses of children. So children, like I said, one child started a petition, children wrote testimony, some of our children spoke incredibly eloquently, parents wrote testimony, they spoke incredibly eloquently, and quite frankly, if this law went into effect, this would impact the children, so they were interested in going, and far be it for us to say we would prevent you from participating in the democracy process. So I actually, I will tell you, I got quite a bit of notice at the State House, and if there's a subsequent hearing, I know other communities will be doing the same. So
basically, if this bill does pass in some form, Pontiac will not have as many tuition students?
correct. If the bill passed with just duplication, I don't see it, meaning if the bill passes, say, if you have a program in the Career and Tech Center or any other school, a child can't come. So we already did an analysis of the analysis of our applications for next year. We had so many applicants that we had to put a lottery in place, and we're turning more than 100 students away. We would still, we'd be turning more like 35 students away, but we'd still, even if the duplication law went into effect, we have enough kids who are applied to attend programs that are not duplication, that we'd still have the enrollment that we're projecting, and we'd still be turning about 35 kids away.
Thank you.
But in subsequent years, obviously, that could be an impact.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? I know you discussed it.
Can I make one more statement for the record? Representative Chippendale, because this was a House bill, I did have a conversation with him. If there's a Senate bill, I actually have conversations with people on the Senate side as well. But because this is a House bill, I spoke with Representative Chippendale. He was there at the beginning of the meeting. He was one of the people who spoke in opposition of the bill, and he was a very powerful representative for your community in regards to speaking in opposition. So I just wanted to note that for the record.
I did hear that. Do you have any questions?
May I ask?
Oh, yes.
How long before the bond is paid off?
I think it's 2 years from now, one part of the ESCO comes off, and that would be the ESCO that was attributed to the middle school, because that building came online first. And then I think it's 3 years from now, it's the high school ESCO will come. So they come in 2 different years, but that is the second year or third year up from now.
All right, so just in regards to that, could you put out at the meeting expectation of decreased costs to the towns in those years?
We can show what a projection on that would be.
That's all, thank you.
It's only, I don't mean only in that way, but I'm sure people think it's going to be millions of dollars.
Yeah, well, it is what it is, it may come with inflation.
Okay. Any further questions? Yes.
Yes, I have just one question. I'm looking at the budget and I noticed that there was an increase in salaries in the amount of $968,000. And as he stated, there was an increase in employee benefits in the amount of $291,000. Is that because there's been an increase in teachers?
Excuse me, both to your question. So teachers have contractual raise that's been built in, but there's also an increase in staff in the budget, because with the increase in tuition money, we're projecting more students to be enrolled in the high school coming from other districts, so that we're also projecting a corresponding expense in teachers to service those additional students.
How much does it cost us per student, our students, town students?
Local appropriation is just under $12,000. So the state kicks in some and the federal government kicks in some, but the local appropriation is about just under $12,000.
What's the average of the CTE students?
The average CTE, it varies by community, the way the legislation is set up, but it's 13 to 15,000 roughly for kids coming in.
So they cover our cost?
I'm very comfortable saying that the children coming in cover the cost. There are unequivocally additional expenses, but we're not, the burden to local taxpayers is, so local taxpayers aren't bearing that extra cost. The tuition money that's coming in is funding the additional students that we have, and I feel very comfortable saying it.
No, I'm good, he's answered my question.
Okay, thank you.
That
Going
answers.
to you next. Any other questions or concerns? I would just strongly urge people in Foster to attend the financial town meeting because it has a big impact on our budget. Okay. The 17th, thank you. I was trying to remember the date. The 17th. Thank you. Next in your packet, which Dr. Bonds, do we have a copy of the letter for Dr. Bonds? We have a letter here that I'm presenting for a APRA for the access of public records. And the letter, I need to make a correction here. It does say Mr. Bonds, it should say Dr. Bonds. But we have this letter before us in regards to some of the concerns that have been brought forth to us by citizens in the town regarding the regional school budget. If I may, I can read it. That's all right with the council?
Go for it.
Okay. So, Dr. Bonds, in accordance with Rhode Island General Law 38-2-1, the Town of Portsmouth Town Council is submitting this access to public records request. With past year, the council has been approached by multiple taxpayers with questions surrounding the financial implications to taxpayers associated with out-of-district students, timely, being tuitioned into the district. At numerous council meetings, you have stated that this practice benefits the taxpayers of the district. However, the structure of the regional school budget in its present form omits many key data points that would allow taxpayers to mathematically quantify the stated benefit. This lack of transparency places taxpayers in a position where they must vote to approve or reject the regional budget without knowing all the facts. In an effort to remedy the situation, the council is requesting the following. We are looking for additional clarity for the following metrics associated with the regional budget for fiscal year 12-13 through and including fiscal year 19-20. For each past year, provide both the actual and projected value for the requested metric, and for current and future years, provide the projected estimate value. The FTE, or full-time staffing levels, historical and current trending for full-time equivalent staffing levels for each of the categories listed below. For each category, we would like to understand the total number of resources, total cost of salaries, and total cost of benefits by reporting year. Provide data by year for fiscal year 2012-13 through including fiscal year 2019-20. Teaching staff, teaching aides, principals, vice principals, clerks, secretaries, custodians, maintenance staff. Central office administration, other support staff. State and federal funding revenue details. The existing budget document clearly denotes the total state and federal aid received by the district each year, but omits the detailed breakdown identifying the channels, programs for which this funding is received. The taxpayers are looking for additional clarity that identifies the specific channel associated to every dollar of state and federal aid. Provide data by year for fiscal year 2012-2013 through and including fiscal year 2019-2020. Tuition students inbound. The existing format of the budget lacks the necessary detail for district taxpayers to determine if bringing in out-of-district students financially benefits the district, or if the taxpayers of this district are subsidizing out-of-district students. For each year, fiscal year 2012 through 2019, please provide total number of out-of-district students educated inside the district, total average tuition per student paid to the district by other towns and districts, total number of in-district students educated outside the district that the district pays tuition for, total average tuition paid by the district to other towns' districts, total average cost of educating any student in the district. Our assumption is this number equates to total district expenses divided by total number of students. If other, please provide a rationale for arriving at this cost. Taxpayer benefit subsidy, positive or negative delta between the average cost of educating a student in the district and the average amount of tuition the district receives for educating an out-of-district student. MERS financial stability, historical and current trending of the regional school districts, funding of employee pension. We need to understand if the district's obligations are fully funded or in deficit and how these obligations are being managed. Cost of administration, the present size of the administration for the district is 6 full-time equivalent employees at face value. This appears to be running top-heavy. 6 employees for such a small district. We would like to know how the staffing level of this district stacks up to districts of comparable size so taxpayers can make an informed decision on maintaining or reducing administrative staffing levels. I will accept a motion.
Do you need a motion?
I need a motion if we want to submit it. Because
I
it
make
says
a
it's
motion,
not-
we submit this.
Discussion.
Is there a time frame that?
It's going, yes, by law, there's a time frame that they have to give it. I will tell you, I've met with several people regarding this, and this is what orchestrated this letter. After meeting also with our financial, Kelly, fiscal year 2012 to 2013, it seems to be not excessive. It is excessive. It's not excessive, it is excessive. So, that being said, we would request for the past 5 years. So that would not be for, from fiscal year 2000, you need to, I will add, I see you there. So for the past 5 years. We also, the taxpayer benefit subsidy, that also Kelly pointed out would be accessible. We can figure that out with the information that you
Which are you
provided us.
referring to with the last one, I'm sorry.
On the second page, the taxpayer benefit subsidy, we would remove that from our request, okay? And also the MERS, Kelly explained to me how that
Not
works.
appropriate.
So it would not be appropriate, okay? You're here. That was one of the reasons why I put it on the agenda tonight, because you could have it tonight, as long as it's voted on. We have the motion, but I didn't know if there was any further discussion since you.
I would just like to include, there's some things that are of value that don't have a monetary value, such as having more students in the building helps us to offer more programs, such as we don't have enough students in our building necessarily to run as many, the diversity of programs we have. So that's one of the benefits. It's not financial, but it is a benefit to the students. So I'd like to just, maybe we could add on a little bit about what the educational benefits are of having these tuition programs, and I absolutely get that you're trying to make sure that we're not using local taxpayer dollars to fund out-of-district students, but note that it isn't meant to be a revenue generating program. Their communities are sending us dollars just as we send our dollars to other communities. We wouldn't want them profiting from that necessarily, but we would want it to cover the costs. So that's just one.
So it doesn't surprise you then that we're asking for this and it
Not
shouldn't
at all.
be a difficulty?
No.
It's good. And I understand the educational value, but I also understand the financial value. Mr. Sabazia?
Yeah, a number of things. One, I want to know who produced that letter.
I did in cooperation with other people.
Well, that didn't answer my question, because I know you didn't do it. Second of all, I want to specifically state that our district is not administrative heavy. That's a rumor from Gloucester. They've been on that for 13 years, and it's completely wrong. We're understaffed, and he's overworked. So I've suggested to him maybe leave the Payne School and go back to his main goal. Years ago, I've asked for a shadow budget, which would cover all the things you're asking for. But I think the things are, what's the time frame? 10 days?
No.
State law is 10 days, or if the volume of document preparation is significant, then you can have up to 30 days by state law.
So I'm going to suggest that you at least give 30 days and possibly give more. He's preparing for town financial meeting. You're preparing for town financial meeting. So this is an extra burden. You talk about staffing, all right, and you just added a whole bunch of work onto the treasurer's work. And I don't think anything you're asking for is incorrect, but I did ask for a shadow budget specifically for this reason, so this would never come up. So
I'm sure you didn't, Susan.
And so I think he needs more time. Personally, I think it's an insult. All right, it's an insult to your. There's been a steady attack on the schools from the town of Gloucester, and
This did not originate from the town of
I know
Gloucester.
that, but I know you talk specifically to people from the town of Gloucester on the council. And other people have. So I would like to make sure that you are getting the best service you can, and you allow him 60 days, even though that's not state law. You both got to get through your financial period.
Thank you, Mr. Savazio,
You're
but let
welcome.
me make it quite clear. Gloucester had nothing to do with this letter. Gloucester does not know about this letter, so just so that you know that. And I don't speak to people in Gloucester.
Buster Steer, specifically. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Savazio.
Yes, welcome again.
So,
I know a lot of people ask about the tuition thing. I've heard a lot of people ask questions about that. Is that, and what Kathleen just said is that it's the money follows the child, right?
yes, correct.
Okay. Well, maybe this will clarify some of the misconceptions, because I've heard a lot of people ask about it.
And every time the budget comes
And
up.
I think that the programs that we have are amazing. The Pathways programs are amazing.
I'm sure they are. I don't have children in there anymore to know.
Nor do I, but
things.
I just think it's great.
Just two quick things. Thank you for the letter. I would say the access to public records law requires a school district to produce documents that exist, and we'll look at this list, and to the extent documents exist, we will produce those. We will follow the law. The other thing I will say is a simple logic statement. We just discussed a bill that was submitted by other communities who are complaining about the lost revenue going from one community to another. So I would find it illogical for it to be a loss for the communities who are sending the children and a loss for the communities who are receiving the children. I would just say logically that seems to be mathematically not necessarily true.
Okay,
So.
thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. We'll send you a formal,
Thank you.
and I would agree to 30 days.
I think that seems like a lot to get done in 20
the
days,
20 days.
10 days or 20 days. That
Right.
just seems like an awful lot of information.
Would 30 days be acceptable?
That's what the law is, will follow the law. That's very simple.
Okay. Yeah, whatever the statute
What's
says,
that?
he can ask for more time, but I mean, just go whatever the statute says.
Okay.
Once you start dealing with messing around with state
Right.
law, then you get yourself in
A
and
bind.
no one knows what
Right.
the rules are.
Thank you. Moving on, we have it's a school night. We have a letter here from the town of Hopkinton regarding schools and financial, reports. We also have attached the, an article of education and also Smithfield School Committee, which I didn't know if you had received this from the Smithfield School Committee.
A resolution?
A resolution for state.
Most likely the same one, yes.
Yeah, I'm assuming it's the same one. So I didn't know whether you had addressed it or not.
We have not yet.
Do you plan to?
We plan to.
Okay, thank you. So, does somebody want to read the letter aloud, or? I have it in front of me, makes it easier. It's the Hopkinton letter.
Maybe, go ahead.
Okay, so it says, it's from the town of Hopkinton regarding state financial support for education. Dear honorable council members, the continued concern of municipal leaders and others dealing with the state financial support for local schools are everybody's concerns. It impacts not only education funding, but the ability of local government to address general government better. We continue to see the state spend money and focus on items that are not as relevant as education, such as private entities, as well as state government itself. The ability of the various cities and towns to focus on education and general government deserves far better understanding and cooperation from the state. Our cities and towns do vary in household incomes, demographics, and access to state services, among other factors. However, Rhode Island's children come from all backgrounds. The grassroots of Rhode Island, the cities and towns, need to hold the state government accountable to the spirit of the Rhode Island State Constitution in regards to Article 12, dealing with education. The Rhode Island General Assembly needs to promote education better for all students, regardless of where they are from. Please advise us to your ideas on what we should expect and demand from the state in additional financial support for local schools, and whether you would participate in such an effort to promote the future of Rhode Island. Local government principally is funded by property taxes, which does not take in account the ability of taxpayers to pay them. Maintaining homes is crucial to Rhode Island families and is a housing issue as well. The Hopkinton Town Council would be interested in hearing from you on these subjects. We look forward to your response. And they sent this also to the Rhode Island League of Cities and Towns, Rhode Island City and Town Mayors, Managers, Administrators, the Rhode Island Association of School Committees, Rhode Island Association of Departments of Education, Rhode Island Superintendents Association, Rhode Island School Committees, and American Federation of Teachers.
That's just a link back.
Just to let you know that. That's what but they are interested in hearing from us. So if there's anything, if you want to give it some thought, there is a resolution from a school committee, the Smithfield School Committee, regarding this. You want to move on? We have the request to use town grounds for Northern Rhode Island 4-H show.
I make a motion that we let Lisa Torgy use the grounds for 4-H, what was the
May
date?
19th.
May 19th.
Is it available, do you know?
It is. I'll second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? When we appointed constables, we skipped the ambulance corps commander, Ginny Caldwell. In the past, the commander had always been appointed as a constable. That being said, I put that in on the agenda so that we could appoint her. Do you have a motion?
I make a motion that we appoint Virginia Caldwell as a constable, town constable.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
And I apologize for skipping that. Moving on down, we have support of Senate Bill 261, Public Utilities and Carriers. I received this from Lieutenant Governor McGee, and I did run it past Mr. Law regarding utility emergency response bill, and it has already gone in front of the House, but we were too late, so it's here for the Senate. What's the pleasure of the council?
I thought this was good.
I did send to Senator Rogers and to Representative Chippendale. I did hear back.
I just think the way National Grid has responded or not responded
Yes.
to us in the storms that we've had, this actually gives them a little bit of incentive by way of penalties
Yes,
in the millions of dollars.
I was
If
happy when I
they
saw
don't
it.
follow an emergency response plan, so I'd support this.
I mean, even the last storm we had,
Yeah.
it was ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, this, I mean, if it's gonna hit them in the pocketbook, I think it's a little more incentive to pay attention to us.
Do we have a motion?
Jim, you can
So,
motion. So,
It's Senate Bill number 261.
yeah, 2019-S0261. And how do you want me to make that motion, just to?
What they're looking for is
Just
my signature
A
on
letter of
the letter.
support?
Yep.
Okay. So I make a motion that the council president sign this letter in support of Senate Bill 2019-S0261.
Second.
Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Ah, okay. I attended a meeting the other night, the Conservation Committee meeting, and one of their members wrote a grant, which made me start to think about asking for volunteer grant writers. Anybody out there that's awake at night, can't think of anything to do. I did speak to our planner, and you have before you what the proposal would be, is to look for volunteer grant writers to research, draft, and submit proposals that help the town of Foster receive grant funding. To develop their proposals, grant writers would familiarize themselves with Foster's programs, goals, and financial needs. They also look into the potential funding sources. After compiling all the information they need, the grant writers would compose and send or meet with the town planner to share their proposals. So it would have to go, before they submit it, so it would have to go to the planner and then it would come to us.
Is this something that you wanted to advertise in the Foster Home Journal or
It was,
something? And
yeah.
then,
I'm hoping, because just sitting there, this young lady writes grants for her jobs, and she wrote a grant for conservation. It was like, okay. So there are people out there that I don't think we've tapped, and that's just something I
no
thought
problem with
of.
that. Because it'd be the planner's final
Right.
review of anything that was gonna be submitted.
Exactly.
I make a motion that we advertise for volunteer grant writers.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? Anyone out there want to talk? No? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. You have a copy of it, Mrs. Dillon, to advertise. Thank you. Additions and abatements.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2016 motor vehicle abatement in the amount of $31.30, and the 2018 real estate additions in the total amount of $21,247.09.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Before we go into executive session, any future agenda items? I still have my list going.
The building committee down there.
You got them all written down.
Yes. I have.
Well, you wrote down the EDC and the charter review.
Yes,
We continue.
yep, on the next.
And the solar.
and the solar is for future. Yeah. And what board or committee would you like to have come before us for a workshop?
Planning, probably talk to them about solar.
Yep, also. Sounds good. Go into executive session.
Yeah, which one am I on? I move to go into executive closed session pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 42-42-4 for the reasons stated in Rhode Island General Laws 42-46-5. A1. And International Brotherhood of Police Officers, Local 637 grievance. And then Rhode Island General Law 42-46-5A2 litigation, opioid litigation update.
Is there a second?
Second. Sorry.
Discussion, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you for coming out.
Thank you.